Hey kids, welcome to Off The Wagon. I am your host, John Patrick Robbins, aka the Mad Editor, and with me is my good friend, talented author, novelist, Jesse Rucilez. Jesse, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good, John. How the hell are you?
Yeah, a lot better now that we're actually taping the second version of this show. So people don't know, Off The Wagon we had to blame that on Ryan. He designed the studio. It's all fucked up. So yeah,
Oh.
no. So man, what the hell you been up to since the last time we were shooting the shit for like 7 seconds ago?
Oh man.
Hmm.
Not too much, man. I just been since the last Off the Wagon episode, I've written a couple more short stories, and I've just been taking my time trying to figure out what I want to do for my next big project, a novel or short novel. I got a few ideas that I'm kicking around.
No, I mean they're just so easy to do, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we have to teach people about writing is that it's just so easy to do. Everybody can do. At least they think they can. That's what I
Right.
hate about when you meet people that you say, "Hey, I'm a writer." Oh, I always want to be one of those. Yeah, right, fucker.
Oh, John. So, you know what happens to me all the time? Well, not all the time, but several
Yeah.
times. Someone will come up, they'll tell me, oh, I've got this really great idea. And then they'll start telling me about it with all this detail, this character and this setting and blah, blah, blah. And I
Yeah.
go, wow, yeah, sounds good. Yeah. And they go, so do you want to write it? And I go, no, I don't want to fucking write your story. That's your story. You go write it, you know?
Huh. Jesse, what's wrong with you? That's what poor people do. We don't. They you don't write your own stories anymore. You just put your name on them after they're done.
John, I'll be honest with you. I'm a selfish bastard. Okay, I hoard all my talent and just keep it for myself. It's
Yeah.
it's it's horrible.
Oh, damn it. I was gonna ask you to write my new novel. I mean, it's only been like
You
3 years.
son of a bitch.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh man. Okay, I've asked you these questions before, but now you have time to prepare for them. It was fun when they were a little awkward, but you're like, wow, John's being serious. But I told you from a previous conversation I was going to get you. It was one of those secret conversations we have in our cult called the frat. But
Ah, yes, the frat.
yeah, the notorious, yeah. So I mean, I know you're a huge comic book fan, man. I'll ask you again, and do you ever think about like just crossing over into that genre? I mean, because it seemed like a natural fit. Because I know you're really into that and superheroes and all that stuff. You know.
I definitely have. I got brothers that are really good visual artists, and I've told them many times if they want to collaborate, I'd be more than happy to write whatever ideas they come up with and caption their stories and whatnot. Um, they're just kind of flighty. They're not as their art they just kind of do for fun, and they're not as serious about their art as I am my writing. At least as far as getting it out there and letting people see it. And
Yeah.
if I had any talent for drawing, I would absolutely do my own comic book.
Yeah. It does seem like something you would naturally just fucking excel at, man. 'Cause I know you're so into that, and it's like that's cool. Not not for me. I am not the superhero type of writer. My superhero would never leave the house and just have a alien technology liver. Once I think I already do. So
Nice.
silly man. Horror, man. What most do you like about the genre, and what most do you dislike about it, as far as writing and movies?
All right. Well, what I like about the genre as a whole is, um, a good horror movie or a good horror story really grabs you, really keeps you reading, and it's visceral. It taps into your subconscious fears and things like that. Um, and it's just, I don't know, it's great. It's cathartic for the dark thoughts that most of us have that we don't act on. I mean, you get to a point when you're watching the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, especially like say Freddy, he's become a cultural icon and stuff. There's a certain point where you start to kind of identify with him a little bit and root for him a little bit. Like kill those kids, get them, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you don't go out and do it, What I like least about the genre, like I said, if horror is done badly, it is boring. The movies have kind of been overtaken by torture porn.
Yeah.
But also too now it's all jump scares. Every time you watch a horror movie trailer, it's the same thing. It's like the flicker and the image shifts on you and something jumps out at you and there's always that ah! in the background. And it's kind of hard to do horror these days because the innocence that used to be there when horror movies really became what we think of modern horror with the slasher films and stuff, like in the 70s when it got really dark.
Yeah.
That innocence is kind of lost now. And I mean, the only thing that really scares kids today is not being included, because they're not really afraid of murderers and monsters because they have their cell phones. They can just pull it out, call the cops. Girls carry pepper spray and take jujitsu classes now. So it's hard to do the genre right now. So that's probably my gripes with modern horror.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, at least growing up, I don't know, there was just more magic to it. It was also just fun. There's the element of fun that's been taken away from it to a degree. It's
Absolutely.
like now they just want to go, it's like they want to prove who can, it's like some of the art is completely gone from it. It's just, gore on top of gore, and I never was a huge fan of that anyways. I like a story. And I do like a genuine scare. I like a pace, not that I didn't like some of just the completely, some shit that I like, people would be like, God, it was, idiotic. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't some fucking genius, but I am a horror freak, always was. And always connected with it and loved it. And I loved all the styles, but I do miss just the good times of it. I mean, for example, like when I watch like American Werewolf in London, I love that fucking movie.
God.
Just so, and it mixed everything. You had humor, you had the human side of it, and you had a genuine horror movie in there as well. So it's like, that's what I missed. There was a fun to stuff that now, with, I'm not a big fan of the Saw franchise and all that stuff. I mean, I thought the first one was good. I was not into the rest of them. It's like anything, when you make it a franchise, it's franchises are not known for their fantastic quality,
Generally not. Yeah.
They fall apart real quick.
Yeah.
But not to go on that we can go on that forever. I forget, we can kind of get lost on that, but
Yeah.
Yeah, because another thing, being actual friends. That's the thing people don't get now. I just pretty much just interview my buddies. It's far easier.
Yeah.
Hey, how do you get people on your show? Well, don't be an asshole and be friends with them and badger them, and you usually get them on there. So anyway,
there you go. Now you know.
Yeah, now you know how you get on the show. I mean, is it ever possible, man, in your mind, to go too dark, or is there like any line you won't cross with your own work?
I really don't think it's possible to go too dark because, first of all, if you look at real life, I mean, you have so many real life examples to draw off of that have really happened, things like the Holocaust, things like true crime, like the Manson murders or Bundy. How do you come up with something more horrible than what Bundy actually did? So it's all in the execution. If you do it in a trashy or glorifying kind of way, then yeah. But for the most part, I think anything can be done, and if you do it the right way, it can be awesome. Like before, I use my one of my favorite novels, Lolita, as an example. It's a horrible subject, but the way Nabokov does it, I think, makes it just you read the story, that's horrific, and he's not glorifying what's going on. And I did the same thing, as I said before, with my last story, which you published, To the Abyss, A Meeting of Monsters, which has really horrific themes of pedophilia and snuff films and molestation and all that kind of stuff, devil worship thrown in there. And the way I did it, I purposefully made some choices with my words in that story so that the reader knows I'm not glorifying this. I don't think it's cool or edgy, you know. So
Yeah.
I think it's all in the execution. I don't really think you can cross a line as long as you do it right, and as long as you are treating the subject matter seriously.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. You know, it's all in the art of telling the story, anyways. And if you're gonna go dark, you know, I don't think you really don't need to. Well, you definitely. I mean, it's all up to you. I don't think art needs to be censored. So if you want to go there, if you're writing about some sick, twisted person, then they're not exactly going to pull any punches. I mean, because in real life they don't. So
Sure. Well,
you know.
listen, I'll give you an example, a real quick example. Two movies, right?
Mm,
Two infamous movies. You've got Audition, which is a Japanese horror film, and you've got a Serbian film, which I'm not sure where that's from. Just kidding.
I don't know.
So they're both horrible movies. Now, I can't say that I liked a Serbian film, but about halfway through, I realized that they just weren't going to let up, right? So I stopped taking the movie seriously and I just started laughing. But overall, I liked the cinematography and the way that the movie was done. You know, it's okay. I don't know if I'd ever watch it again, whatever. Now, Audition, I personally didn't like it. I know a lot of people do, but to me, it's kind of a good little mystery thriller for the first part of it, and then the end just devolves into torture porn, and I didn't see the point of it. So that's my line of delineation.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree on that. I to me, I'm always like, I mean, as long as you know it's a movie, I'm fine. I mean, I can
Sure.
remember this is not the greatest example, but I can remember watching the uncensored version of the original, not this stupid remakes, but the original Last House on the Left, and thinking, man, this is some weird. It just went into that kind of really dark and uncomfortable territory,
Sure.
and then again, and then I was like, you know, with my own storytelling, I was like, yeah, it is kind of good sometimes. I think to make the reader, the viewer, a little bit uncomfortable, because
Sure.
it's not meant to always be. Yeah, you can go and have fun if that's what you know. Because some horror films are basically overrated action films. They're fun, they're crazy. I mean, you know,
Sure.
horror to me is a broad subject, and yet people want to kind of limit it and look down on it. But it's it replaced the western basically in film, and so it became a huge genre that gets looked down on. Yet most studios were financing themselves from these low budget horror flicks. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I personally, there's a couple films. The only thing I'm really like against, and I liked a lot of the Italian directors, but there's a couple films like Cannibal Holocaust I wasn't into because it just when you're going in with real animal killings and like that, I that's just not art. That's just
See, now
that,
I've heard of the movie and I know its reputation. I have not seen it, but I probably would be right there with you. I mean, I would watch it just to say that I
yeah.
did, but I'm sure that afterwards I probably wouldn't want to watch it again. But you know, here, if you want a soundbite, this is what I feel. I think the best art doesn't massage your brain, and that can be anything. That can be writing, movies, sculpture, paintings. It should be something that jars you a little bit
Yeah.
and maybe makes you a little uncomfortable, but you don't forget it, you know?
Yeah. I completely agree. It's just yeah, that was probably the only film I thought. Well, and of course I saw it just because I remember I think I was just watching a commentary. I think it was on the original Wrong Turn because I'm one of those kind of guys that will actually watch director's commentary and all this stuff, and he said one movie that psychologically damaged him, and I thought, well, I guess I got to go find that now. So, and I've seen a lot of stuff that were fake and all that crap, and yeah, just not into the real. I think it's when you're, the art of it is making it seem real and not being real. And yeah, definitely not a a fan of the film, but anyway, I know they put out the other Eli Roth version, but still not. It's just not my thing. I'm not into torture. I think you lose something with it if there's absolutely no hope in what you're doing, and then it's just, let's just say how we can make you want to upchuck. I'm like, no thanks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty good. But all right, man. Here's a fun question for you. It's such an easy one. Like a novel, man. Where does it truly begin with you? And take us through the process from beginning to end. I know that's such an easy question.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're writing a novel, you got to figure out, obviously, your story and your characters in the story. So when you think of a character, you should know that character's life story, at least in a very general sense. So you got to figure out what part of that story, or at least your characters' lives, are worth writing about. So as I said, it could be a couple days, it could be weeks, it could be years. There are some novels that encompass centuries. So you just got to figure out, first of all, which time frame is, and then where I like to start is usually right at the moment that the main character's life is taking a turn and sending him down this road that's going to unfold in what the novel's actually going to be about. And all my novels, I think, pretty much they start right at that point where, because that you want to get the reader's interest right off the bat. So I think you definitely want to present the main focus of the novel right at the beginning, and or at least it should be a scene that has some action or something intense. You want to grab the reader's throat and hold on, and hopefully make them keep turning pages and not be able to put your book down. So outline it so you know where you're going, but leave room for twists and turns along the way. And I think the hardest part about being a writer, especially writing longer works, is you got to figure out your own process. I'm not sure if we went over this too much in my first appearance on Off the Wagon, but in Stephen King's book on writing, he talks about the way he likes to work, and I read that obviously when I first started writing, and I kind of was trying to emulate him a little bit because I didn't know any better. But over time, I kind of figured out that I don't really work the way he does. So each writer, and that's a really hard thing, is trying to figure out what works for you. For me, when I come to a project, I'll read over what I wrote during my last session, and I'll take the opportunity to do a little bit of editing, but it also gets my mind back into the story. And then I'll pick up and I'll work on the next session. And then when I come back to it, I read over what I wrote last session. So I'm kind of, skipping back and forth in the story a little bit, which some writers, that might not work for them.
No.
So that is a tough question, but every writer's kind of got to work it out for his or herself, definitely.
Yeah, no, my whole process is basically don't write anything and just run 20,000 magazines. That's how I keep my name out there. See, that's a secret mind trick people don't understand.
Well, I figured every time you felt the urge to write, you would just take a shot of whatever was closest, and cure that itch.
Yeah. Whatever do you mean? Are you implying that I drink? I mean, today I'm celebrating my 1 day of sobriety. I mean, I get a ring and a kazoo and everything.
Nice. Well,
yeah, I know.
You run the Rye Whiskey Review, and literally every one of your Facebook posts ends with "See you at the bar." So I kind of thought maybe you like to drink a little.
Yeah, a little bit, and I hate to tell you this. Every member of the true frat likes to drink.
I'm sure.
To different degrees.
Yeah.
So I think you've experienced that. Once is unique. You've been on the inside of one of those legendary frat calls, and those are a hot mess. It's like, wow, do you really want to talk to us? And it's like,
that was an experience. Definitely an experience.
Oh man, like where do you find most of your ideas come from? Is it like a challenge, coming up with new concepts?
Um, Not for me. I know a lot of writers struggle with coming up with story ideas, and you hear that line, I want to write but I don't know what to write. That's never really applied to me. I always have ideas. They just come to me spontaneously, walking down the street, or experiences at whatever job I'm doing, or I read a lot of nonfiction, and especially true crime, and I get tons of ideas from that. So for me, my biggest problem, not that you asked, but for me has always just been motivation. Some days you just don't feel like writing, or you just
Yeah.
don't want to. But no, as far as ideas come, that's not too hard for me. I think writers try too hard, definitely. You the best ideas are usually pretty simple. You just want to put a little spin on it, or have some interesting characters in there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't, as I said and said before, you're not going to reinvent the wheel. I think
Yeah.
that's a mistake the first time writers make. They want to do so much in such a little space. It's like, like when you're a really good cook, you got your base, and you don't want to add too much to it, because it just comes out like nothing. It's like, yeah, I've heard some people when they describe their outline of a story, and then it goes like, and we start at a simple thing, then the next thing you know, it goes to espionage, to superheroes, to aliens, to Pac-Man. Who knows? It's like, I don't know how he got in there, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know, it's like, wow. It's like, yeah, we like what you do, John. It's really simple, and you seem to drink a lot. Like, thank you calling me an alcoholic. I appreciate it. No one ever does that. So, that's a setback, kids, when you write about alcoholism and being a male whore. I mean, so it's like, anyway, but there are some other stories in there somehow. They seem to leak out now and then, but yeah, it's you're not going to reinvent the wheel. That's definitely the truth, man. One thing I will ask, and there's a few questions I'll probably skip over just because they're kind of, we've already asked them. Hell, if people really want to know, they can hear the outtakes.
Well, it's up to you. It's up to you, John. I'll answer whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's like music part of your process, and like, if so, man, what are some of your favorite bands? Because I know for me, music's kind of everything when it comes to
Oh,
writing.
oh man. Okay, so I don't like to listen to music with lyrics when I'm writing, because it just interferes with my narrative. So when I'm working, I'll put on like one of those ambient music mixes on YouTube, or some classical music, or whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, one of my biggest influences as a writer is my favorite singer songwriter, Warren Zevon, which most people, they only know him from his one like real famous radio hit, which is Werewolves of London. But if you really get into his song catalog, he's got some tremendous music, and his lyrics are just, one of his fans somewhere on a message board described it as literature set to music, and I really feel that way too. And he actually collaborated with novelists on some of his songs. He was buddies with Carl Hyacin, who he writes kind of contemporary sort of crime type novels, in the Janet Ivanovich type vein, but
Yeah.
and he was friends with Hunter S. Thompson and Dave Barry and those guys. So yeah, he was a very literate guy. So he's definitely an influence on my writing, and a lot of my stories, for Warren Zevon aficionados, you'll see little um, allusions to him and his songs and stuff here and there. But as far as my favorite bands, I mean, man, you'd have to break it down by genre. My favorite is just, I love classic rock from the '70s. I love the Mellow Mafia. So give me the Eagles, uh, Fleetwood Mac, Linda Ronstadt, all those, Carole King, Janis Ian. When it comes to country, I love the Outlaws, Willie Nelson, Waylon, Merle Haggard. Um, when it gets into heavier stuff, just straight ahead rock and roll, you know, AC/DC was my favorite band when I was a kid. Love them. I love the 80s hair bands, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath. Um, two of my biggest influences also were Rollins band, and well, just Henry Rollins in general, but I really love the Rollins band, and Danzig especially. I was a big fan of Danzig. I mean, that guy could write some serious lyrics. It's just pure excuse me, pure poetry.
Yeah, yeah, Danzig was definitely awesome, and you gotta love his easygoing ways.
Yeah.
You know, you look at him wrong and he wants to punch you. It's a very nice man.
Yeah, Glenn, you know, he's a softie. You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was also a little bit overrated as well, is when you see some of the interviews and how they antagonize him anyways. I mean, most of these people
Yeah.
don't want to be interviewed, and then you have people that like to be assholes. I mean, I know it's hard to believe that an interviewer would be an asshole. I mean, because I'm such a naturally nice person. Uh, so yeah, no, I can understand it, because to be honest, I can't stand being interviewed. Some people say, yeah, but you interview people. Yeah, I know. That's just because it's my life goal. I decided,
Yeah,
I'm going to keep writing and
you
be a
have
podcaster.
yeah, you have respect. You know what I mean? You don't bring people. Well, I haven't listened to all the Off the Wagon episodes, but you don't bring people on your show and then try to, you know, fuck with them. Like, I mean, you could bring me on and say, well, your last short story that I edited and published was about a, you know, group of devil worshippers who make snuff films with little kids. So, are you saying that devil worshiping is cool? You know what I mean? You could try doing that kind of shit, but that, you know, that's not the kind of guy you are. But a lot of interviewers will do that, especially with a guy like, you know, Danzig, who kind of has that darker image and takes himself pretty seriously. And by the way, if you want to incite me to rage like instantaneously, bring up Danzig's height. I don't know why, but that pisses me off so bad. Whenever I mention Danzig, the first fucking thing some idiot always says is, you know, he's really short. It's like, who gives a
shit? You know,
I don't give a fuck if he's 5'2" or whatever. So what? I mean, I think it's just, you know, there's not that many rock and roll dudes, or especially back in the 80s and early 90s when he was at his height. There's not that many rock and roll dudes who are that swole, you know, or buff or whatever. And in his videos, you know, he kind of comes across as larger than life. So people always want to downplay that. But it's like, you mention Axl Rose, nobody goes, oh, do you know he's 5'9" or, you know, whatever. Man, it makes me nuts. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd slip that in there for so wow. Everybody listening out there, just don't bring up Danzig's height around me. I know he's short. I don't give a fuck. I like the guy. If you got a problem with his height, go talk to him. And when he kicks your ass, I'll just laugh.
You know, I don't know. I was always a fan of him, but I was a fan, you know. Then again, I would piss him off instantaneously, because of course I would mention the Misfits, and it's just fun. It's fun to fuck with people, but I for some reason fuck with people, and I usually don't mind. Yeah. But you know, oh, John's drunk. Who gives a shit? You know, but so no, I don't understand it. People just. That's another thing with people you hear on certain shows. I know, because I was on one with a very antagonistic asshole. You know, I believe in speaking in the circle of truth. But sure. The thing is, you know, I believe when you host anything, is the key to being a host is just like you invite somebody in your house, is to have a little bit of manners. I mean, I don't bring people on just to incite, you know, a
Absolutely.
Fight. So it's like, yeah, that's the reason I don't really, and that is some people's style, and that's some people's style when they interview people. They're antagonistic, because in honesty, they don't have anything interesting to ask, so you just want to push a button. So, you know, it's just not being very imaginative, and there's a lot of people who are not, so trust me, I know most of them. But so yeah, not to go on that tangent, but you know, during all this fucking insanity and all this terrible stuff we're going through right now, how has it like affected you as far as writing and whatnot?
Well, I've had a lot of free time, which was normally great for a writer, but like I said, I'm kind of going through a period where I'm not sure what I want to work on, and my motivation just hasn't been there. So I've actually been using the time to read a lot, which is good because that fuels my imagination. And once I jump back in there, I'll have a lot more energy. But personally, it hasn't impacted me too much. Just some slight inconveniences here and there. I know it's caused a lot of hardship for other people, and some people are, climbing the walls, being at home and stuff. But I've always been just asocial. I like being at home. I don't mind spending large amounts of time by myself because as a kid, I spent a lot of time by myself anyway. So, yeah, as an adult, I've almost always lived alone. I've had roommates for like a total of 7 months out of my adult life, and I just prefer living alone, which I've done primarily for 20 years now. So it's
Yeah.
the lockdown, no problem. I don't really want to wear a mask like everywhere I go because I feel kind of dumb doing it. But other than that, no problem at all for me.
Well, I mean, I naturally had it because like I used to like to rob places, but now I can just I don't feel special anymore. No, I'm joking.
Right.
Um, that's the thing that like somebody asked me, man, I'm going crazy doing the. I mean, I've always been a loner.
Yeah.
I've spent a majority, and I'm probably more forced to deal with people now than ever in my life. I mean, even as a bouncer, you just sit in the corner and just watch people. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not this social butterfly that people seem to think, oh, it's such a social drinker. And like, no, I'm not. I don't like people. But it's like, it's a misconception that I'm just this kind of overtly, I can be outgoing when I want to be, but that's just part of, even if you can get up on stage, I can turn it on and off
Sure.
naturally. I mean, it's not really affected me in that sense because I'm not like a go to the bar guy. I mean, I'm the only guy that builds his own bar so I can just be in a bar at all times and write in one. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the truth. That's the
Sure.
absolute truth about me. And that was that was just one of those mind fuck things when I was a kid. I remember and this is not, I don't ask me why I thought this was such a thing, but I was fascinated always with being a writer. And I remember, what was it, Ray Bradbury Theater, when they used to
Oh.
show him going into his workshop and he had all this huge place he would go write and all this crazy shit around. And I didn't realize it was probably a load of crap, but I was like, yeah, that's what I've got to do when I'm, I literally have grown up and believed all the bullshit, but that's okay. So yeah, no, as far as being isolated, it's no different. I think writers can win this hands down because most writers do isolate to begin with. Who the hell writes in a mass group of people? You know?
Yeah. I've I've heard some writers say that they like to go to coffee shops and sit and write and stuff like that. And I've
Mm,
definitely, out of necessity, I've definitely had to write in my share of restaurants and things like that, like before going to work and stuff. But
yeah.
no, I mean, my best stuff is usually when I'm home and isolated and got my environment just the way I need it, and I can really relax and focus.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Not in the least have I ever. Believe it or not, I'd never written in a coffee shop or anywhere. Like I'm one of the people. I have to be alone.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not going to work. And I usually have to be in a certain environment. So made it bad whenever I traveled. It was like, well, this is not home. So,
Right, right.
you know, but I had other hobbies like drinking. So it's amazing how I can split my time up between drinking, editing, and writing now,
There you
and
go.
podcasts. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, anyways, man, and talk about drinking stories because we are on Off the Wagon, and
Sure.
we always love a good drinking story. Do you have one to share with us? Have you brought one for the class?
Oh God, drinking story.
Mhm. Good, bad, in between, don't care. Just give us one.
Okay, I don't really have a specific story just because I've always been a very tame drinker. So at the risk of sounding kind of lame, I will say when I lived in Seattle for about 5 years, I was a supervisor with this company that worked downtown. It was an ambassador program, and my team and I. It was kind of a ritual that I inherited when I went over to the team and took over. But the team would routinely get together and go to a bar and drink. And even though I wasn't a big drinker, I realized I had to go with them every now and then, just as a show of solidarity. And since I was technically their direct boss or whatever, it was good to build up a rapport with them and let them know I'm one of the boys and stuff like that. So one of the guys on the team, he suggested that we start going to this place right down by the Pike Place Market, for people who are familiar with Seattle. And that's the only bar in my life that I've ever really liked going to. They had really good food, and they had their own brewery there. So I spent many a night down there drinking Crown Royal and their own brew, which is called Pike Place Kilt Lifter. So that's about it for as far as drinking stories, man.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, like, no, yeah, no. Obviously, you are the more lightweight of our circle. So,
Yeah.
no, like, passing out in somebody's house that you don't know, or crashing your car into somebody's house once. It seemed like I like the element of houses there, but none of which happened to me. I have had friends that happened to. I have.
Believe it or not, all of my like really messed up and crazy, wild and crazy type stories have happened when I've been stone cold sober. I'm kind of a lunatic that way, John. Alcohol just puts me to sleep. So.
Oh, there you go. You don't need. Hey, don't be ashamed. No shame to the game. If you're naturally crazy, then more power to you.
If I take the lock and key off of my id, yeah, it's basically like hanging out with Beetlejuice.
No. Fine example there.
Yeah.
Crap cereal.
And I have plenty of people out there that can attest to that. So I'm not making that shit up.
All right, now I'll go for one of these atypical literary questions. I at least sat down and wrote all these questions. And I'm like, I'm gonna really fuck with Jesse this time. I told you I was gonna get you, so and this is one of these atypical. I don't know. I feel like I'm running the actor's studio now. I should just ask you really awkward questions and stare at you.
All right.
What is a writer? The writer you are today. What would you say to the writer you were when you started out? See, there you go. That's one of them deep questions. Or weird.
Ooh. No, that's a good question. If I could go back and tell the writer that I was, man. Well, I think I would say don't try to write a novel right off the bat, which is what I tried to do. I'd say, listen, just take little situations and just start writing little vignettes and working out your process. And then I just straight up tell him how I write today, like my style that I've come up with. I'd be like, look, this is what you're going to evolve into, and the sooner you do it, the better. So I'm just going to tell you this right now. The hallmark of my style is, unless I'm writing in first person or whatever, my narration, I avoid the passive sense, or the passive tense, excuse me, at all costs, and I try to look for more poetic ways to phrase things. And there was actually one night when that realization kind of hit me. I was trying to sleep, I was having insomnia, and I was thinking about my writing, and I realized that would be the next step of my writing, is to really just leave the passive tense behind completely. And Nabokov, especially that book Lolita, was really the catalyst for that. The way he writes that book was so inspiring. And anyway, that's getting pretty technical, but that's what I would tell my younger self.
No, well, I know what I would have told myself. It's like,
put the bottle down.
Yeah, no, put the fucking pants on. It's fucking 4 p.m, you lazy bastard. Don't masturbate in front of the window anymore. I mean, it's very frowned upon. But no.
Sure.
Yeah, that was a little bit crazy back in those days. People say like you're not now. Oh no, I went beyond crazy. There's no level of crazy. When you hit into the editor job, you're normal to them. It's like, yeah, it's like, fuck, we were waiting for what other crazy shit you would do, you know? Oh man, you ever feel, in writing in the horror genre, you can get like labeled unfairly as strictly a horror writer?
Um, well, if I'd had any degree of commercial success, that I guess that might have happened. I think in general, I think that probably I think today all writers get labeled because I don't really think you can be successful as a writer today, at least popularly successful, unless you are writing in a very specific genre.
Mm-hmm.
And a good writer can write anything. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, the best storyteller around in modern times is Stephen King, and obviously he's written mostly horror, but you pick up different seasons and those stories in there aren't really traditional horror at all. And I mean, a lot of people's eyebrows raise when you say Stephen King wrote Shawshank Redemption, he wrote Stand by Me, and things like that. They're like, wow, really? There's no monsters or craziness in those stories. So, but unfortunately, yeah, I mean, you to really make it as a writer today, you have to pick a genre and stick with it. It's either like kind of dystopian teen fiction or straight
Yeah.
fantasy or housewife erotica. Those are pretty much those are pretty much the genres that sell now. Or straight
Yeah.
up romance, mystery. The mystery field is still going, but it's still dominated by Grisham and Patterson and those guys. So yeah, it can happen unfairly, and if you're an idiot like me and you want to write just any genre, then good luck.
Well, yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, I wouldn't know. I don't worry about that word success at all. That's one
Yeah.
good thing when you do what I do. You just don't have to worry about shit. It's like, wow, people are gonna, if somebody gets one of my books, it's usually by accident. So
Sure.
it ain't because I sent it out. Even my friends know that. I'm
Yeah.
a bastard. But when it comes to choice between whiskey and sending out books, yeah, I'm gonna buy the whiskey. But
Yeah.
you know, um, is there anything you've written that maybe you wish you could have redone, or are you like content with your overall body of work thus far?
I'm pretty content. Um, my novel, Bobby's Dream, there that's a tough one because it's one of those. It's one of my first things that I ever really attempted, and that manuscript went through a lot of different revisions,
Mm,
and I rewrote it as my style changed. And the final version that it's in now, for the most part, I'm happy with it, but it's only 66,000 words or so, and the story is pretty dense. I got everything in there that I needed to get in there, but I think that there are parts that I stripped down a little too much when
yeah.
the last time I rewrote it, and that's the only one that nags at me a little bit, because I think there are parts of it that I probably should have fleshed out a little bit more. Um, but I just remind myself that that was, one of the first ones I ever tried to write, and it really, it's all writers have that early work that they look back on. I mean, I'm sure like King looks back on Carrie and thinks, he could probably do a better job with it if he wrote it today. So but that's the only one. Although I'm still really proud of that book. But for the most
Yeah.
part, pretty content. Yeah.
No. No, I mean, man, I think everybody's a little bit critical. I mean, it's not, it's just one of those things you ask because I mean, I know, Jesus Christ, if I didn't have like 3 books pulled from the, the original publishers, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. That's what
Oh,
people always wonder why I started my own shop, and I'm like, yeah, because I'm the only one that I can trust. So,
yeah.
and that's not a knock against the presses, because Jesus Christ, that's all I needed. I don't want them to start getting their pitchforks out. They already dislike me enough. So So, and anyways, but no, I think we all kind of are ultra critical of ourselves, and I think any good writer is, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think if you just think everything you do is perfect, then you're a bit insane.
Sure. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, so, but I mean, yeah, you're a hell of a writer. So I mean, it's just like I said, you make that when it comes to putting a novel together, you're incredibly technical writer who could just make it look easy. So I do applaud that, and of course I am a fan.
Well,
You know,
I appreciate that, John. All I can really say is I studied the masters. I didn't just read Stephen King's books. I really studied how he constructed them, and the way he was laying out his story. And he was my biggest influence, that's for sure. So
yeah,
I learned from him and Ray Bradbury, as you mentioned earlier. I mean,
yeah.
Fahrenheit 451, that's in my top 5 favorite books of all time. I mean, I love that book. I love that story. So I probably the reason why you like my work is because you can see my influences of those guys. I didn't grow up reading, a lot of the stuff that the writers, the younger generation grew up reading. So their work is a little more contemporary, and I think mine has a little bit more of a classical feel to it.
Yes. Well, I mean, I was strictly Shakespearean influence, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
So
that's obvious, John. I mean,
that's clear. My great use of dialogue is like, wow, are you a child? Well, yes, I am. Thank you. And so, how do you hope to be viewed as a writer, man?
Oh,
Deeper question. So
yeah,
there you
yeah.
go.
For anyone who's read my work, I hope I just hope that I'm looked at as someone who tells a good story, and
Yeah.
takes the art of writing seriously, because I do. I take it very seriously.
Well, I think anybody can tell that, man. I mean,
Yeah.
from how you structure things, and it's a craft, and you truly respect it, and that's one thing I have a lot of respect for you. You definitely don't just slap things together. You take your time, and I
Sure.
do think that's something that writers really do need to. I mean, like they'll look at me like, John, who are you to say anything? Well, anyways, it's my show, so then, but
Well, you're also the editor, so
I just think that speed and everything kills. Take your
Yeah.
time with it. It's a craft. Take your time with anything, and it's worth it. I move at the speed of a snail. So I mean, we've been talking about doing this podcast for God knows how long. So
Yeah.
it just shows people that I get it done, but it takes a while. But then again, it's not like I do anything else. I mean, so yeah, no. Like in your opinion, man, what makes a great character in a story?
Oh, that's a good question. What makes a good character is definitely somebody who's memorable. If you think about the world of film and your favorite movies, you're going to remember the characters from each movie that are unique, or went through something just crazy that you can't get your head around, or that just have a personality to them. You know what I mean? So I I think, like you were saying a little bit earlier, writers can try too hard, and that's absolutely true. And I guess it's cliche, but it's also true that writers should always be paying attention to what's going on around them. They shouldn't. I mean, obviously they're going to be inside their head, but at the same time, they're going to be hyper aware. So when you're talking to people, when you're observing people, you're listening to the way they talk, the things that they say, their mannerisms, and you can kind of cobble different things together, and maybe not even consciously, just subconsciously as you're thinking about a character. But you want to build up someone who's just someone that sticks in your mind by being different. I mean, one of the, probably in the world of literature, the most one of the most famous examples would be the Walter Mitty character from that short story. Uh,
Mm.
he's referenced in just in daily speech. People refer to the Walter Mitty lifestyle, things like that. I mean, not so much anymore, but in
Yeah.
times past, it was a kind of a cultural reference. And it's because that character, when you read that story, it sticks with you. So that's what creates a good character. Just being unique, not necessarily a caricature of a person, but someone who's unique and someone that you could definitely visualize as being real.
Yeah. Definitely. It's like anything. You really create an interesting character. The best characters are all very, very close to real people that
Right.
that I think the bet it's a bit like pro wrestlers used to do when they'd come up with their character. They kept it very close to who they were as a person. So I think a lot of characters, at least the characters you read from me, are very close to who I. And don't get me wrong though, because I do write about killers as well. So I'm not like doing that on the weekends, at least anymore. Naughty. Uh,
Not that
you know,
anyone could prove. Yeah.
there's no evidence. What do you got? So no. Yeah, I think it's got to come from somewhere it's most of the people I write about have been real life people, or I take something from that. Not that I'm
Sure.
just stealing personalities, but the character that you're endeared to, you care about them. If you can't connect with a character, then what's the point of turning the page? I mean, if it's just
Right.
flat.
Sure.
It's with horror, it's a little bit different because you're going to kill most of your characters. So
Yeah. Yeah.
a little bit more sketchy, you know. So,
Well, if I mean the same goes for for like villainous characters too. You know,
mhm.
you can take those different traits that you see in people and create someone who's just awful, but who's so believable that the person reading the story, they'll remember that character and even have a visceral reaction to that character. I've had
Yeah.
people read my work and then they talk about my characters as if they're real people, and that always freaks me out because they're real. They're real inside my head, but then that's kind of uh it's kind of like now they're real inside this other person's head too. So
Yeah.
it's always kind of a pleasant surprise when that happens.
Yeah, it's really cool when people connect with something, but it can be strange too, and I can imagine on a huge level that would be very alarming sometimes because look at Misery.
Right,
We'll
right,
talk
right,
about
right.
Stephen King. Yeah, some people do get that weird attachment to something that is just unnatural. Once it's a little bit, that's why it's good to have distance between you and your readers. And that's why I have no success because I don't want to actually make money from this shit or anything. It's like, but anyways, uh, um, in your opinion, man, what are the biggest mistakes a writer makes when first writing a novel or a short story?
Oh gosh. Well, oh man. Probably what I did, just kind of, coming up with a high level concept and then realizing that I wasn't quite ready to tackle that concept. Like my writing wasn't quite ready to really give it the depth that it deserved.
Hmm.
So, those kind of cliche writing exercises and things, I guess, that people do at writing workshops or in writing classes, when I was younger, I thought that all was kind of BS, but I think they do have value. Like I said, that I would tell my younger self, write vignettes and just, kind of work on your process that way and kind of build up your chops a little bit before you dive into something really meaty. And
Yeah.
what you kind of touched on as well earlier, keep your ideas mainstream. If you have, I mean, not mainstream, but streamlined is the word I've meant.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I had a beer as we're going through this, so I'm getting
Uh-oh.
got a little buzz going. But um streamline your ideas. don't try to add too much in there. You know, if you start out, if you've got an interesting situation and it's working, don't throw in some other crazy shit just to, you know, because you think the story's dull or whatever. You know what I mean? In fact, a lot of times I've read things by different writers and I thought, well, you know, this part of the story probably could have been a whole separate story. They could have just applied that to a different situation and, you know, could have came out a lot. You know, you could have done more with it and it would have been even more interesting. This just sort of clutters up something that didn't necessarily need to be there, you know?
Yeah. I agree with you on that. I'm definitely not, no, I can't tell people how to write no novel, but a short story I can definitely, I've done a few.
Sure, sure.
So it's like, no, there's just, at least my main thing is just don't try to do too much.
Yeah,
Just, you know, I look at any short story, any project you're doing, almost like building a bridge. You know where the beginning is. I always know where the ending's going to be. It's just getting that middle and kind
sure.
of building that and keeping it interesting, getting it from point A to point B, and keeping it as precise and moving it along as quickly as possible. That's always my biggest worry. You know, I don't want to drag. I just don't want to take up. You know, people have a short attention span,
Sure.
so
But
I
now
just want to kind of get the point across, you know, and get out of there.
so, some ideas will take on a life of their own though, man. Like you start out to
Yeah,
write a short story and the next thing you know it's ballooning up to be like a short novel or something and you're like,
yeah,
damn. So that's
yeah,
that's a hard thing to deal with too. And I really don't have any advice for other writers on that except, you know, good luck.
yeah, yeah. Don't ask me for and don't ask me to read it.
Yeah. For God's sake.
John, do you have time to read my 20,000 page ode to something? No, I don't. It's like, of course I have time. I need to not sleep at all, and I'll
Right.
just like, you know, staple my eyelids open. Of course, I don't sleep naturally, so there you go. Something else we have in common, you know. So we're gonna go ahead and I think I have tortured you long enough and get ready to wrap this up. But
All right.
uh, any projects we should be looking forward to you from, like, you know, from the future? I know what I was trying to say. Anyways, anything on the horizon that maybe we should be on the lookout for? Anything you want to plug? I mean, you know.
Let's see. Well, anyone out there that's interested in my stuff, you can go to my WordPress blog, which is jlrucilez.wordpress.com. And I have excerpts of all my stuff there, plus links to all my work that's published online through Amazon. I also have my Amazon page. I have the Death's Avenger blog, which is a continuing story that I've been publishing online about. It's a dark superhero story about a guy who becomes an avatar of death. That's a lot of fun. It's very relaxed and a little bit looser than a lot of my other stuff, but just dark and gory and compelling stuff. And it's all free. I've got the first volume, which I believe is 18 or 19 episodes on there. And then I have the first episode of volume 2 on there. So eventually I'll get back into that and be updating that. But for now, for anybody that hasn't read it, there's plenty there. As far as future projects, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I had a short story published about a year or two ago called Protean Man, which was my first foray into real hard science fiction. And I want to develop that idea into a novel. I actually was working on a novel in that sort of world several years ago, but it just was coming out kind of derivative and, you know, and not really all that great. But that short story definitely reflects my updated style, and so I want to take that and I want to develop that into a novel. Not exactly sure where I want to do with that. One thing you might find interesting, I have an idea. I want to do some fantasy story type stuff, but I want to do it in the old style of the epic poems of like Beowulf and you know, the ancient Greek poems and stuff like that. But I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure what I want to do. I want it to be unique in the fantasy genre, so I'm still toying around with concepts and characters and things like that. But I just kind of want to do something to throw back to that style, but also with my writing style in that, say, form of the epic poem. So that's something that I'm excited about. Hopefully I'll be jumping into that within the next year or so. And other than that, I don't know, short stories as they pop up.
Yes.
I have no control over that. I have no idea. So that's about it for what my plans are at the moment.
Well, there you go. I mean, and I mean, so many things go on the horizon. I know for myself, I'll be starting at least 20 more magazines. And, my Perfect 10 Poets is a great magazine. It doesn't actually, you don't even have to send in poetry, just pictures of yourself naked. It's fantastic.
Well, Scott will love that.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, that would be the truth. But no, man, it's been great having you on the show, and I feel like we really did cover way more than we did on the first one, and I feel like I tortured you with a lot of intelligent questions that you weren't prepared for. So that's what I like.
No, it was far from torture. I like being asked intelligent questions about my writing because honestly, it doesn't happen very often in real life. People just say, "Oh, well, how do you come up with your stories, or where do you get your ideas?" That's all people ever really ask me. So, I especially like talking about the craft of writing with another writer. So
Yeah.
that for me is actually fun. So this was not torture at all, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's how I intended it when the show started because I kind of got tired of. I just wanted to showcase the people behind the pages, and I just got tired of the stock. I'd had a few, and not disrespecting, but there were a few stock interviews that they would just hand the same questions to every writer, and I always find that to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like you can't even take time to ask me something original, and and I've had some that have been interesting, trust me, but no, that's why I did that and really showcase and sit down because I love talking writing. I know nobody would ever think that, but I can be serious on occasion. The folks that really know me, there's not too many that do, and most are like, "Yeah, we heard about that son of a bitch." Great reputation, but it's been great going off the wagon with you. Thanks for being on the show, Jesse, and thanks to everybody for listening, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, John, and shout out to Ryan and Scott and the frat boys.
Oh yes, they are always listening. I mean, who you think puts this together? Ryan does. Ryan is the technical master.
That's right, the technical genius from up north.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you very much for being on the show.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.